Welcome those that have joined us on a glorious Friday afternoon. So this is the UK-RAS white paper opening ceremony session thing to introduce the new white papers. So some of you may be familiar. UK-RAS has published a selection of white papers, various subjects. I'm going now from memory, but we've had extreme environments, manufacturing. Today we are going to go through the education white paper first, and we've got Richard Waterstone who's going to present that. I don't think there's anything more for me to say, except they did come up with a message earlier saying this is being recorded. Oh, and it's got a message on the screen, so it is recorded. I guess that's not going to be an issue because it's only the few of us that are going to be on screen anyway. If there are questions, we will get questions after this, and if you want to put questions into the chat, that's good. If there's nothing else, Marianne is here and will tell me that I forgot to do something.
No, everything's fine. It's just to say that we're posting the recording on our YouTube channel so people can view it later on. Okay, so in that case, I will pass over to Richard, who will talk about the white paper that he's been writing.
Awesome, thanks, Barry. Right, so if I can successfully screen share now. So is that okay? You're all here?
That's it, that's perfect. Yep.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Barry, and many thanks, everyone, for coming. Basically, for the white paper that I've written, and Professor Prescott also here is a co-author on the paper. So thanks for coming, and basically it's just to give a quick presentation for our white paper published today on preparing the workforce for 2030, skills and education for robotics and autonomous systems. So the paper, basically the white paper is kind of built on something we did at Sheffield Robotics, a report 2 or 3 years ago into skills and education for robotics and AI, where really we kind of just looked at the skills gap around robotics and AI as it was then, and also looked at some kind of good local initiatives and solutions in Sheffield University, in the University of Sheffield, and in the kind of wider Sheffield region, really, that were trying to address this. And then this time we really wanted to kind of to take that on really with a far more kind of national picture, really, and just look at going on really what's going on much more nationally, and look at kind of initiatives really kind of over the whole country, and really try to target it more at preparing the country for 2030 and for the workforce of workplace for 2030. So rather than just kind of highlighting the kind of very alarming and appalling gaps that the UK kind of has around robotics and autonomous systems, to instead really try to think constructively about how we can help prepare for the fourth industrial revolution, obviously in full swing at the moment, and the very different workplace of 2030 that we're about to encounter. And so my co-authors, Patricia Charlton from the Open University, David Gibbs from the National STEM Centre, Tony Prescott, who's here. And basically we managed to kind of avail ourselves of the great networks we'd built up after the last report on the CERAS kind of national task group that we started with, involving 18 universities and further education institutes and not-for-profits and for-profit companies, all kind of basically interested in this subject. Kind of crucially as well, we really thought it comes at an utterly kind of vital time basically now, where with the kind of fourth industrial revolution really gathering pace, you know, with this kind of amazing confluence of different technologies of kind of obviously robotics, AI, general autonomous systems, machine learning, data science, additive manufacturing, all kind of really coalescing together to kind of really fuel this fourth industrial revolution, which is kind of going at a pace kind of faster than anything we've seen before, even in the previous 3. So that right now, for instance, accelerating so much that there are 3 times as many robots as 20 years ago. The amount of robots have doubled in just the last decade, so that we're looking at a kind of figure worldwide now of 2 million robots worldwide. And a lot that's really kind of changed to really kind of fuel this acceleration as well is that whereas pre-2020 robots were very much seen as being really kind of part of the industrial sector and being an industrial technology, now it's the kind of service sector that kind of robotics is really coming into in a big way now, and that is really accelerating kind of adoption of autonomy worldwide, really. You know, with anything, you know, obviously in healthcare, we'll talk about a bit later, but also anything from law, banking, you know, all these sectors that were previously untouched by automation are now kind of, you know, really being kind of fueled by themselves. Hazardous environments also another kind of a key area that robotics is really, really growing in, which is kind of leading to this adoption kind of worldwide. The huge speed of it kind of feeds into very much what the esteemed economists kind of Golden and Katz were talking about on the previous 3 industrial revolutions of the last century, is that they basically almost kind of represent a race between education and technology. And this time, because we're going kind of so fast, you know, compared even to the last industrial revolutions. Obviously, there's a kind of a, you know, we've got to now come up with the skills and kind of education policies, systems and initiatives really that are as innovative and urgent as the technologies that are fueling 4IR. Obviously, COVID is, you know, has really fed into this as well, and you know, whereas before, you know, it's really helped, I think, the public kind of really see robotics differently. So whereas before, kind of autonomy, robotics was very much a kind of, you know, seen in kind of media, kind of tabloid headlines as, you know, they're gonna kind of come and kill us basically, and or take our jobs in one order or another. And you know, based in and very much kind of itself fueled by the kind of sporadic release of the Boston Dynamic movies, you know, with quite scary looking robots being prodded by sticks and things that really did kind of cement in a lot of people's minds, I think, this kind of image of robots being slightly dangerous, really. But you know, COVID's actually, you know, obviously we kind of made a huge difference to that, and I think a lot of people now, you know, really think of kind of disinfecting hospitals and how robots can help in healthcare, and basically how they can kind of help to take humans out of dangerous situations and you know, use robots there instead. So I think that really has kind of helped, you know, change the kind of public perception of robotics. Similarly, kind of massively disruptive, obviously, for the UK is Brexit. And differently, not so much then that Brexit's kind of changed our attitude to robots, but it's just kind of really added to the urgency of kind of sorting the UK around automation. And whereas at the moment we're the bottom of the G7 in terms of adoption, you know, Brexit has really taken us to a point where, you know, we really now need to kind of come up with kind of automotive technologies really to replace labour that we used to hire in for, you know, for certain sectors, you know, obviously agriculture being the main one of those. And I think now, rather than kind of thinking, you know, so much the horror stories now don't center so much on killer robots, but more on kind of empty supermarket shelves really, and fruit rotting in the fields and all our vegetables unpicked. And you know, obviously kind of agri-tech generally is a huge challenge for robotics, how to actually kind of, you know, to create the kind of the you know, the effectors and the grippers, you know, using haptics to kind of sense the softness of the fruit and things is going to be a huge challenge for us, but one that just only really makes everything all the more urgent. So basically, kind of, we find really that this has created a kind of real golden opportunity really for the UK. We were miles behind everyone else. And, you know, I don't want to really depress everyone with all the stats now. I'm sure you know them and can find them for yourselves. But we are at a place now, really, post-COVID, you know, and post the Brexit, that, you know, it does give us a golden opportunity to kind of rip it up and start again slightly, really. And the very nature of the technologies fueling 4IR, you know, and obviously particularly of robotics and autonomous systems, does give us the chance actually, you know, to just kind of really to adopt these new technologies and really take the UK on and sort out the dreadful productivity gap and the skills gaps that we have in the UK. Obviously, you know, key to all this, you know, in this race between these technologies and the education is the skills, is our skills deficit. And you just trying as much as I can to avoid kind of depressing statistics, but you'll see at the top there, the dearth of skilled technicians below degree level. It's estimated we're short of about 45,000 technicians a year, really, coming out of the skills and education pipeline that we're going to desperately need in this country, really, if we are going to succeed in 2030. And in fact, in the UK, we've got this particular situation that we are kind of bottom of every kind of G7 or European table in, really, is that people's highest qualification, if it's not a degree, so levels kind of 4 and 5, basically, in technical subjects, for some reason, we just have a huge hole there, where other countries are really, and our competitors are really kind of churning out technicians and people with kind of technical qualifications, between A-level and degree, basically. Management, we've also got a real problem in adoption, basically. There's a kind of lack of general technological understanding of facility at management level. So there's a kind of just a lack of understanding generally about what these technologies could do for employers and for manufacturing. We've obviously got then in the wider workforce really devoid of requisite skills in numeracy, literacy and STEM, again with some terrible stats that we won't go into now. So underlying all this is often just that we've found, with all these interviews with employers and with educators, is that it's a matter of a lack of kind of hands-on practical experience of new technologies and of technology and of robotics that is kind of underlying all this, basically. Is you've got people coming out of all levels of education and people who are in work at the moment, and as we know, 3/4 of the workforce for 2030 are actually in work now, just not really having the chance to access this technology and get real kind of hands-on feeling and understanding for it. Similarly, in the kind of apprenticeship scheme, something like 18%, I think, only of places of kind of potential training places in technical training have been taken up because employers just simply can't find the training near enough to them to access. And schools as well, of course, apart from the private school sector, which seems to be kind of booming and, is doing everything it can to kind of prepare its students for 2030. We've got a state sector which is desperately short of resources, basically, and the children going through the systems just aren't able to actually get experience of this technology. Diversity is obviously a kind of a huge issue in this as well. Again, with some, the stats that basically only 20% of the STEM workforce is female, and that we have the lowest percentage in Europe of women working in engineering at less than 10%. A lot of this issue often comes down to kind of role models, and again, then kind of girls and women not seeing science and engineering especially as a career, and then not really getting hands-on with science kind of all the way through. Got kind of really good results at GCSE and A-level and really good participation, but it really kind of drops off after that. There are kind of a lot of initiatives at the moment which kind of are actually really quite hurtful, I think, around diversity. And a lot of that is coming out of the competitions that are being run. Things like all the kind of first robotics competitions, and first of all, actually, the BBC kind of microbit did an awful lot for that, and the kind of anecdotally and in the research coming out of microbit, they found that when girls were given a chance to work in teams and to kind of actually get hands-on with technology, that they did as well or even better than boys. So that's something that we can really build on. Diversity, of course, isn't just a matter of gender. Also, in terms of kind of ethnicity in the UK, it's a kind of a very similar picture that ethnic minorities are kind of proportionally better represented than the kind of British white counterparts, often through the education system in STEM subjects, but just don't go on to engineering, robotics, technical jobs afterwards. And that's something we really need to look at there. Similarly, in terms of disability as well, and there are some studies starting to come out, but again, that we're making very little allowance really, and making it easy for people with disabilities to kind of access the jobs market more in robotics and STEM, when in fact, in things like autism, we're possibly really kind of missing a trick there, because, there does seem to be a really kind of potentially kind of helpful link really between a kind of a keenness to get involved physically with robots, basically, and autism. This kind of really takes us, back to then what employers are looking for really, and the figure you can see in front of you here is basically taken from a census of about 1,000 employers and 500 secondary school teachers, just asking them what they thought the main skills would be really for the workplace of 2030. And as you see, overwhelmingly, it's not university degrees, it's not that everyone needs to be a coder and that we need kind of armies of coders out there, but it's problem solving, creative problem solving, collaboration, digital literacy, critical thinking. These are the kind of things that actually, the employers and the educators out there think that really will be the skills that we're going to need, and that at the moment are kind of barely touched in the curriculum really, or in kind of any kind of adult skills programs that are out there. It basically kind of comes down to then, the kind of problem solving, and lots of employers we've talked about is that what they're really looking for in people is that it's the kind of the keenness and the ability to look to kind of solve problems in the workplace using technology. So it's really using technology as a tool to solve problems, and to be kind of quick off their feet and adaptable and flexible, and feel that they've got the confidence in using technology to solve problems in the workplace. And and often, coming into that is, just a more kind of experiential, tangible learning, basically, that kind of really leads to this. And it's something that's being really explored in the competitions, or the kind of first robotics competitions and WER ones, as well as, and in kind of initiatives and kind of out of school initiatives, more like that really. And that that's showing kind of huge promise really for how we can just start hopefully preparing people for the 2030 workplace. So, and it's not just much a kind of army of coders we need, it's a kind of people with this general facility with technology really, and a kind of volition and a willingness and an eagerness to use technology and to use these kind of amazing new technologies in their work. It's not, we've barely found, that there's hardly anything in the curriculum itself, and in adult skills thing, but, making and competitions, have had a huge effect on this. Kind of coming out of the kind of fab labs, I guess, and things originally, this idea with incredibly strong literature behind it that, if people kind of actually get their hands on technology and kind of make things to solve problems, someone with a kind of plant watering system, whatever it is, to solve kind of problems, in their environment, to make things and then share it with others, does an awful lot to kind of foster this kind of teamwork and problem solving kind of outlook on things. As very much, these competitions, especially in America, they're starting to be used here a lot more now. Initiatives like Discovery STEM in Sheffield and Yorkshire, or in Wales, Techno Camps are kind of a hugely successful initiative that uses FIRST and WER competitions basically to really engender this kind of problem solving and teamwork in people. And again, that's had huge success in terms of diversity and in kind of engaging people with these technologies. And really does seem to kind of foster this kind of tangible learning. I know then kind of anecdotally, I'm talking to a couple of guys at Technocamps who have taken teams from Wales over to the States for the big kind of finals of these competitions, who say that then employers often, see it as kind of incredible prime fertile ground for hiring really. Is that, you're there and you've got these people who are using those skills that we saw earlier as in kind of problem solving and teamwork and critical thinking, that are needed by them, to prepare for the future workforce. Other really interesting kind of initiatives at the moment that really kind of seem to be doing a lot are things like the Newton rooms that, again, the MIT introduced the Fab Labs at the end of the last century, and then from Penn State University came this idea of Newton rooms that's now kind of that are now absolutely booming and are kind of rolling out kind of all over the world. There are now 2 in Scotland, and especially in more isolated areas, it's the same idea, is that you're giving children who otherwise don't have access to these technologies real hands-on practical experience of technologies, and Newton rooms have really proved a huge success, as have learning factories. We see here an example. So learning factories coming out of Penn State, of course, Newton rooms coming out of Norway in the same year in 2007, where basically kind of the whole idea of learning factories, and the picture of the one here is in the Ruhr Valley at Bochum University in Germany, is that then you can kind of really simulate work environments. And I know kind of in Germany, and especially, that it's very much kind of local skills partnerships with local employers, so that you're getting kind of workers and students then actually in the learning factories, actually using the technologies that then they will use in the jobs that they'll go to in their local areas. And again, there are now kind of over 120 learning factories worldwide. So that's just in less than 20 years, and from when they first emerged out of Penn State University, they're proving hugely successful internationally and are really spreading. Similarly, kind of digital learning technologies are obviously kind of key to what we should embrace. And if you imagine a future where we can have these centers of innovation as we have now, and robot learning factories, and they can be connected basically digitally to this kind of wider ecosystem of SMEs and of people who need skills training, basically in work, and to schools, and the kind of the increased capabilities of digital twinning now, and of simulation, of kind of an enhanced connectivity to the cloud, really does kind of make these technologies really realizable. And I really feel we need to kind of get to kind of gaming level as well, in digital technologies, really. And then and if you really feel that if we can really embrace that, we can do an awful lot to kind of inspire and engage people in this technology with genuinely high-end digital resources. So I know I'm in danger of overshooting, so just to finish up, our main kind of recommendations coming out the white paper is kind of primarily, we really need an improved access to resources. You've got employers and educators saying what was really missing coming out at all levels of education and in the workforce at the moment, and in any kind of adult skills training, is just genuine kind of tangible contact with robots and with high technologies. And this is something that we feel is very scalable and affordable. And if a kind of national public repository of actual and digital high-end resources could be established through robot learning factories, through mobile vehicles like with Fab Labs that can go actually around and take technology to communities, that this could do an awful lot just to engage people and make them want to work with technology, which is obviously the key to it. And as you'll see in the white paper, that that repurposing the apprenticeship levy would be a good way an easy way to fund this, basically. Learning factories, we've got an awful lot to learn from, and from establishing more of these industry skills partnerships, so that we can actually kind of help employers give people the skills that those employers actually need. And as we're talking, and really not, as Andy Haldane said at the moment, is that we're very much in a situation with these amazing hubs, our incredible universities, for instance, that we have in the UK, and the centres of innovation, that we need hubs, we need spokes from these amazing hubs out to the kind of really long tail of SMEs and of an unskilled workforce, and basically students who just haven't had the kind of practical experience of technology that could help them. So we're basically looking at these kind of cyber physical systems where, rather than having a kind of massive building program, which we're never going to build, kind of further education colleges all over the UK, is that digital learning technologies linked to a few robot learning factories and the current centres of innovation really could supply these spokes and really help this kind of learning and good practice, and kind of tangible experience of technology come from these amazing centres out to the SMEs and out to people who really need these skills. So as I was saying, that we feel that all in all, it really comes down to a practical experience of robots through mini hubs, through robot learning factories, little as Fab Labs do with their mobile Fab Labs. You could have kind of mobile robot learning factories that go out to schools, go out to libraries, and that they then link kind of through digital technology to the main centres. We feel is something that could be hugely helpful and really help the UK prepare for 2030. Thanks.
That was very interesting, and thank you very much for that. And I think obviously education is something that that impacts us all, and I think is of interest to us all. So there is going to be a little bit of time now, not a huge amount of time, but some time for questions and answers. So if you want some questions, then please put them in the Q&A. Just as a first question, you did mention the apprenticeship levy. And I wondered if you knew of if you had any good examples of where the apprenticeship levy is being used to support this type of activity. My feeling is universities haven't really exploited the apprenticeship levy, and industry, I don't think all industries are aware of the fact that it really is cost neutral to them.
Yeah, and I think, you know, some of the employers we spoke to are very much of the opinion that it often kind of serves more of a tax, I think, is how they see it really, and that they don't see, you know, the system working for them at the moment, which is a problem. And you know, so I think again, it's something like the kind of robot learning factory idea. If we can kind of provide kind of facilities really for these companies to use that are near enough to them, that are in their kind of locations, then that we feel from the people we talk to, they'd really kind of jump at the chance of that, because they really want to access these skills and to kind of generate workforces, you know, who have the skills that we're going to need for 2030. But at the moment, I think that they feel that they just can't find the training that they need.
Can I come in there? Because I think from discussions with some of the bigger companies, I think it's a problem both ways. The universities also don't want to put on these courses unless they are properly funded, and the companies don't have the funds to, you know, to fully back a course by themselves. So there's maybe a role for organizations like UK-RAS to help coordinate setting up a course and sitting between the companies and the universities to work out what is an appropriate course that would meet the needs of multiple companies, and where would be the best place to provide it. So I think at the moment there's a bit of a gap that needs to be bridged.
Okay, so there's a question from Rob, and actually during your presentation, I was particularly disappointed to find out that robots aren't going to take over my job anytime soon, which, you know, how could they do things on Zoom like we do? But I suppose in theory that there will be lots of requirements for young people to be trained into these new technologies, but there's also the existing workforce, and you know, how do we go about training some of the existing workforce and the more older people in society into these new tools?
So Barry, again, I think, yeah, absolutely. So 3/4 of the people, you know, who we're going to need, you know, in 2030 in the workplaces are in work at the moment, and you know, and a huge issue then is how we help them basically. I think primarily actually engage with technology. We found in, you know, in some field work and engagement projects we've done, you often kind of get this kind of idea that, you know, other people over the other side of the hill, and you know, in another town or something, are kind of more au fait with the technology that, you know, the technology is fueling for IR, but they aren't, and that somehow it's for other people, you know, that robotics is not for them, it's for someone else. And I think, again, you know, just giving people kind of practical experience. And we've really found with Tony at Sheffield Robotics, we've done a lot of engagement projects around the UK, and I've really found that if you can actually introduce people to robots and use telepresence, so they're in a robot, so they can actually kind of handle the technologies, and then it demystifies it a lot, really. And I think kind of helps, you know, engage people and give people, you know, actually an eagerness to work with technology and see themselves as someone who can work with the technology. So again, I think kind of principally that would be really helpful and would be going to go a long way. And as we know, learning is much easier if people actually want to learn. And, and that if we can kind of help people want to learn by engaging well with these technologies, that would go a long way. And again, we really feel that, with kind of robotic centers of excellence, robotic learning factories, and kind of mini hubs, then the kind of mobile units go to, we can really go out there and help give people this early contact with technology that then digital techniques can kind of follow up with a lot.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So I think, given the time, we'll move on. But thank you very much. I'm fortunate that I've been able to read through both the white papers, this one and the surgical one. The education one was really interesting, so I would encourage people to read it, and the links are available. So so thank you very much, Richard and Tony. And I think if people have more questions, please put them in a Q&A chat window and they can be answered during the next session. So the next white paper we have is on surgical robotics. This follows on from the surgical robotics white paper that was published by UK-RAS in, I think, 2016. So it's an updated version. We don't have any of the authors with us today, but they have prepared a video, which I think Marianne is hopefully going to start playing.
Hello, this is Christos Bergeles, reader at King's College London in surgical robotics.
Hi, this is Anna. I'm the Robotics Forum Manager and also manager of the UK branch of DIHR UK, an EU project on healthcare robotics.
And hi, my name is Ferdinando Rodriguez. I'm Professor of Medical Robotics and the co-director of the Hamlin Center at Imperial College. I'm Pietro Valdastri, Professor of Robotics and Autonomous System at the University of Leeds and Director of the Robotics and Leeds Network. So we're delighted to be with you today to launch what has been a couple of months endeavor to try to produce a white paper that captures the future perspectives of surgical robotics in the United Kingdom. It follows a white paper that UK-RAS launched in 2016, which was spearheaded by one of our current editors, who's Christos Bergeles, and colleagues of his. But because the topic is so fast-paced, it was opportune to actually have a revisit or a refresh of this white paper, which has basically taken us all the way to today, where we are able to launch it with you all. So, Anna, if you could share the next slide. So, as I said, the original white paper of 2016 covered the broad topic area of surgical robotics, with elements in the white paper that we basically drew from to produce this 2021 version of the white paper, which Anna will be able to share in the next slide. And as you can see, it has an introduction, which of course is quite natural for a white paper like this. And then it follows with an overview of the past, present, and future of the surgical robotics field, with a very strong focus on healthcare robotics or surgical robotics in the United Kingdom. It then proceeds with some translational barriers before we go through a comprehensive SWOT analysis and end with a set of recommendations, which we hope will inform policymakers, funders, and government in their future approach towards this very special field of science and technology. So just before I pass on to Christos, who will give us an overview of the past, present, and future aspect of the white paper, I wanted to share with you how we came about producing it, which is the next slide. And it began with a pretty detailed review of the 2016 paper, followed by a widespread consultation, predominantly with UK stakeholders, but not only. And you'll see some of the most active contributors to this white paper, which was very much a collegiate effort to try to capture a broad vision of surgical robotics in the United Kingdom. That was done via a questionnaire, which we then used as the basis for a first draft that was then circulated with stakeholders and discussed iteratively in a comprehensive workshop that was part of the Hamlin Symposium program of 2021, and specifically the work of was carried out on the 14th of May 2021. On the basis of this interactive session, We then incorporated changes and went through a final review before working with the UK-RAS team to publish the white paper that will be launched as of today. And that's pretty much it. Again, a very special thank you to not only us as the editing team that put things together, but of course UK-RAS and the many contributing you see on the slide. So Christos, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ferdinando. So this white paper continues pretty much mapping out the trajectory of UK research and how this fits in the international landscape from where the previous white paper had ended. So we have comprehensively studied again the past achievements of the UK research community, the present endeavors that we are actually publishing at the flagship conference, the Journals of the Field, and then considering the future directions that seems to be emerging from the research that is currently carried out, and what will shape the endeavors of the next 5 to 10 years within the UK community. The UK community in surgical robotics has had extremely successful achievements in the past and is a very productive community in the present. Some of the first human trials of surgical robots have taken place in the UK. Some of the first commercially translated systems have taken place in the UK. This led to a flurry of activity around image-guided surgery and surgical robotics, with the predominant emphasis being on image guidance rather than on the mechatronics development, which has taken to a certain extent a secondary role given the excellence of the community in computer science and aligned activities. This is now changing. There are more and more mechatronic systems being developed, pioneering research on soft robots, on rehabilitation systems, on implantable systems, on growing robots, and all these promise a very successful future research capabilities within the country. We believe that the current emphasis on soft robots and continuum robots, intelligent systems, surgical data science, all these will culminate in activities that are bespoke manufacturing, smart and intelligent actuators, implantable systems that are able to accommodate the anatomy, intelligent robots that promise autonomy and autonomous surgical features, and definitely lead to the building up of an ecosystem that is supported by industrial endeavors, which have not been that successful in the UK, apart from a notable emphasis on Cambridge Medical Robots, which is really a shining beacon worldwide in international investments in surgical robotics, but also within the country, showcasing what the country can do in terms of research and clinical translation. And this really paves the way for the discussion that Anna will now tell you on how the market is shaping nationally and internationally.
Okay, thank you, Christos. Yes, so regarding the surgical robotics market, as you can see in these figures, we have an analysis by geography, area of surgery, and also more specifically regarding endoscopic devices. So regarding the surgical robotics market, the United States has one of the biggest market shares, but Europe is following that in second place. And regarding the area of surgery, we see that there's the area of surgery, general surgery takes a big piece of this market shares, and followed by gynecological surgery. And then we have urology. Now, regarding the robotics endoscopic devices market, it's important to highlight that the United Kingdom is the second country holding most of the shares. And regarding the future, we're seeing an increase in the revenue that this market is generating. So for now, 2020, 4.5 billion is what we're seeing in terms of revenue in the surgical robotics market. And then we expect 9.6 billion by 2026. Now, continuing with, the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats that we identified based on all the previous analysis. So as I showed before, the UK is a market and surgical innovation leader in this topic. In 2019, it was ranked third globally in robotic surgery innovation. And this has been possible thanks to the strengths that you see here. So we see a distributed research excellence across different topics. So for instance, in soft robotics, we have new materials being developed in Imperial College London, new structures at King's College London, new surgical phantoms at the University of Cambridge, and new sensors and sensing schemes at the University of Kent and UCL, just to name a few. Another strength is that the UK counts with a high quality clinical trial units, thanks to the UK-RC, so the UK Clinical Research Collaboration. And this infrastructure basically supports all aspects of clinical research. Then another strength that I wanted to highlight is the variety of funding bodies that are available across the translational spectrum. So from MRC and EPSRC for basic and applied research to the NHR and the Surgical MedTech Cooperative for translational development. And yeah, finally, another strength that I wanted to highlight is the UK's international reputation for investment returns. So in 2020, 63% of the total VC funding came from outside the UK, so non-UK sources, and medtech was the second sector that was most funded. Now, regarding the weaknesses, there are some obstacles that prevent or slow down the progress in surgical innovation in the UK. So the first is an absence of an explicit innovation pipeline. So the process of translating a concept to a commercial product is fragmented. So we have larger companies that have a natural advantage over smaller companies, which are usually academic spin-outs. Another issue is affordability. And the risk-averse mentality of robotic surgery within the NHS. So an example is for an investment to be deemed feasible, some NH trusts require a 12-month return on the proposed investment, and this is sometimes not possible with surgical robotics. It can take several years to show this. And yes, although, as you see here, although the UK is one of the leaders in robotic surgical innovation, these are some barriers that prevent or slow down the progress. One thing that that we can see is that is a result of this is that we don't have as many key players as the United States, for example, but notably we have CMR, Renishaw, and Smith & Nephew. Opportunities. So there are several steps that the UK could take to accelerate the progress in surgical robotics and spread the benefits to a wider number of people. For instance, here we have 10 opportunities that we identified, but for sure there are others. For instance, setting up a central training and information facility for regulatory affairs, a single center for developing surgical robots. Another idea is capitalizing on the nationalized structure of the healthcare system here in the UK. And yeah, easing access to surgical robotics platforms. And finally, introducing robotic surgery simulation into the core curriculum of surgical training. And finally, threats. Some of the main threats that the UK faces today are related to global competition. So as I said before, one example is the US holds almost half of the surgical robotics market shares globally. And there have been increases, they have increased startup funding. There are a lot of company acquisitions by very big device giants, producers. And another threat is Brexit. So regarding Brexit, this could lead to new barriers for exporting products and also a reduction in international research collaborations. I wanted to highlight that the EU is the UK's primary research collaborator in this topic of surgical robotics. And finally, another barrier are the restrictions to recruit global talent. So the UK, we're seeing that it's moving towards a scheme that is preventing or hindering the ability of institutions to recruit internationally. And this, of course, would affect the global competitiveness of the UK. I think this is it. And now I would like to pass on the word to Pietro that will talk about the recommendations.
Thank you, Anna. So in this white paper and through the work that we have done, we have identified a number of recommendations around different areas, in particular discovery, translation, assets, cluster, skill, and support that researchers should receive from funding agency. And so a first set of recommendations, next slide, please. The first one is around discovery. So here we suggest to increase funding related to surgical robotic challenges and organize large-scale challenges to tackle urgent clinical needs and support early discovery, phase 2 preclinical feasibility trials of new surgical robotic technologies. Second recommendation is around translation. Here we suggest to improve the ecosystem for startup companies in the field of surgical robotics. In particular, our recommendation or suggestion to the government is to consider directing specific Innovate UK calls towards the field of surgical robotics, and also support the establishment of benchmark metrics and demonstrators of patient benefits via robotic surgery, because these are really crucial for the field to progress and to improve translation. Another recommendation on translation is to reconsider the current relation and management of IP by academic institutions. At the moment, there is sort of one-size-fits-all approach, which is not proven very successful. So here we suggest the UK university review their current approaches around IP protection and IP management and licensing, and try to pursue a more comprehensive view about the return on the investment made in academic research to facilitate translation and encourage investors to invest in startup company and in companies to license the IP that has been produced here in the UK. Another recommendation is around assets. So it would be great to support the creation of anonymized annotated data repositories to facilitate research in surgical robotics. And so we suggest the government to invest in the creation of an NHS-wide network of annotated and curated data repositories to train surgical robots. And this would build on our strength of having a single healthcare provider, the NHS, and would definitely improve research in surgical robotics. Next slide, please. We have a recommendation around clusters. So surgical robotics is an extremely multidisciplinary field. So we strongly suggest considering to support joint centers of excellence in surgical robotics, addressing different healthcare needs, from cancer to orthopedic surgery and to other forms of clinical applications. An important recommendation on skills. Before Brexit, the UK universities and research centers were able to attract postgraduate researchers from EU due to the fact that the PhD fees were at the same level of national students. Now with Brexit, this has gone. And so we strongly suggest the government and university to reconsider the eligibility requirements for doctoral training partnership, the DTP, beyond the current limit at 30% for non-UK nationals. So increase the possibility to attract international students, and this would allow us to attract the very best PhD students from anywhere in the world and properly prepare a pipeline of workforce for the field of surgical robotics. And then the last two recommendations are around support. The first one is related to the fact that the surgical robotic field is very interdisciplinary, as we mentioned before. And so as such, there are multiple funding agencies supporting our work, from EPSRC to MRC to NIHR to Innovate UK, and also several charities like Cancer Research UK and Wellcome Trust. So it would be great to create a cross-cutting theme among multiple agencies with a specific focus on surgical robotics, so we can have a coordinated approach to funding. And the last recommendation is looking at international collaboration. So at the moment, we as research community can use several instruments to collaborate with partners outside the UK. So European grants, collaboration with NSF in the US, and also other mechanisms to collaborate, for example, with India. It would be great to improve these mechanisms, for example, for collaboration with the US, considering agreement with the National Institutes of Health, and more broadly, consider a framework, a shared framework program with funding agencies around the world. And so with this, and of course, you can find all the details of each of these recommendations in the white paper. And with this, I'll pass it back to Ferdinando for the conclusions.
So all that is left for me to say is that for a white paper such as this to be broadly useful to funders and our main stakeholders, it is important for it to be the output or the result of a concerted and comprehensive effort. And we hope through the financial and otherwise support of UK-RAS and broad engagement with stakeholders to have done exactly that. You will have the details of the white paper available to you today as we officially launch it. And as you will see, we paint a picture that is positive, very positive for a field that has grown significantly over the past decade, despite some pretty significant setbacks and political and policy changes, importantly with a real revamp of the medical device regulation, or the medical device directive into the medical device regulation. Importantly, thanks to UK-RAS again for funding us, and thank you to my peers who have been instrumental in putting together all of this. It really has been a team effort, and it's been a privilege of the many things an academic has to do to really sort of work with some leading academics and operational staff within this community to produce what I believe is a rather strong attempt at capturing our collective views. And a special thank you, and Anna, if you could share the next slide. A special thank you to the named contributors to the white paper that you can see on screen, and of course their name is on the white paper as well, and to all those who made a less but important contribution to the white paper through the widespread consultation that we've carried out over the past few months. Thank you to the audience for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you enjoy the labor of, or the output of our labors. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. So I think, yes, so we can stop the video. Yes, keeping perfectly to time. There won't be questions on that particular one because the authors aren't with us. I think if you have any particular items to discuss, please put them in the Q&A, but we're close to 2 o'clock. All I would want to say at this stage is, if you've been inspired by any of this to write your own white paper, please get in touch. Contact me and I can advise on topics and the kind of things that we expect in the white papers, and can just talk through it with you to see if it's a sensible thing that you're proposing. But other than that, I think it's 1 minute to 2, unless I see Richard and Tony are still here. If you have anything to say, say it now. Otherwise, we can disappear.
No, really, just to say that, like the people just before us there, thanks a lot to UK-RAS, really. We really enjoyed the opportunity and really enjoyed working on the white paper. So thank you.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you for attending. I hope you found it useful, and you can now download those white papers. I think they become publicly available at 2 o'clock. And you can download and have a look at some of the other white papers if you're unfamiliar with them. So please enjoy your weekends, and we'll all see you soon.